Hello! Welcome to another episode of Torn Book Club on this June 21st, 2015. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers who are out there watching this and to all of those who are watching this who have fathers, which I'm pretty sure is all of you. Thank you all for joining us for another episode, and we will be continuing our Silmarillion discussion, but in a little bit. So who do we have in the chat right now? I see we got I Stole the One Ring, Temple, Eruvandi. I saw Ava here a little earlier. Yeah, okay. Alright, so welcome everybody. Today we will be discussing just one chapter of the Silmarillion, but it's a big one, and I will give you the chapter title, which is a little bit of a spoiler. It's called "Of the Ruin of Beleriand and the Fall of Fingolfin." So read into that what you will. We'll reveal what that means in a little bit. Also, just a quick reminder that next week we will be doing a Book of the Month discussion, so we won't be doing the Silmarillion next week. Next week we'll be discussing The Neverending Story by Michael Ende, and I'm looking forward to that one. It's a really good book, and yeah, that should be a lot of fun. So everybody's talking about how their dads are Ents and wizards and wear pointy hats. Oh, you people are weird. Anyway, so some of you may have noticed, if you follow this show or The One Ring on Facebook or on Twitter, we're going to have a presence at San Diego Comic-Con in a few weeks. We're going to be having a panel on Friday, July 10th at 4 p.m. I don't know which room we'll be in. But the panel is going to be called What's Next for Tolkien Fans? And so it's going to be me, I'll be there, along with Garfy Mao, who runs tons of events here in Southern California. And we'll also be joined by Quickbeam and Keeley from Happy Hobbit, and Larry Curtis, Mr. Sayre, who was kind of our embedded reporter in New Zealand while they were shooting The Hobbit. What are we talking? Ava's saying, I wish I could be at that panel. I love panels. Yes, it should be a good one. We're putting stuff together now for it. It's more speculative than normal, because the only thing that we know we're going to be getting in the future in the Tolkien world is an extended edition of the Battle of the Five Armies. So we're going to speculate a little bit about what we can expect from that. And we're also going to be talking about what the future may hold for Middle-earth in the realm of film and TV. What studios can and cannot translate to film yet. So it's going to be very speculative, but it should be a lot of fun. And then after that, at 7:30, if you're in the San Diego area, if you're there at Comic-Con, you can join us at the Ghirardelli Ice Cream Shop for our ice cream social, and we're still working on a fun punny name for it. There's a couple that are sort of rising to the top, but I won't reveal what those are yet. Ava's asking if the panel will be filmed. I hope it will. That's not really my domain. The guy who is in charge is Justin, and we've also learned that our panel is going to be against the big Star Wars panel happening in Hall H. So we don't know whether or not yet he'll abandon us for Star Wars. So, but hopefully we'll be able to get something from it to show all of you. So yeah, that's gonna be in a couple weeks. We won't be doing an episode of this show that weekend. Not because I'll be there at Comic-Con. I'm only going to be there on Friday, but because I want to keep the channel open so that anybody who is doing any torrent live streaming from Comic-Con doesn't get interrupted by me. I stole the One Ring is saying the unexpected ice cream. That's pretty funny. Okay, one of you in the chat has correctly named the one on Twitter that is getting a lot of favor among us Torn staffers, but I won't say who and I won't say which one. So you'll have to wait. So, on to the Silmarillion. Bum, ba-da-bum. So this chapter takes place just a little bit after where we left off. Bring up the map here. So at this point in Beleriand, most of the southern area, and let me bring up, there it is. I now have it set up so that I don't need to jump between oh god, that's going to be difficult. Okay, I don't need to jump between programs to draw on it. So basically through all of Beleriand here, it's now mostly dominated by the elves. So we've got I'm just gonna briefly go through where everybody is and what's going on, just to help set the stage a bit. We got Morgoth, who is still holed up here in Angband. Yeah. Right there. He still sends out orc raids every now and then, but it's mostly just little raids. We're still in the 400-year-long Siege of Angband, so we have lots of elves encamped in this field here, right around here, which is called Gondolin. And that's sort of where the main siege is happening, and it's mostly elves just kind of sitting there, keeping an eye on Angband. And Suzanne is here. Hello, Suzanne. And she is working on button capes for Comic-Con, I'm assuming. I saw you post on Facebook. I think you've got, what, 3 done now at this point? Sheesh. And I've had to carry those things for her in the past. Those things are heavy. I don't know how she does it. You are a trooper, Suzanne. So we've got elves in Gondolin. Temple saying, wait, 400 years? Yep. That's what Tolkien says. This lasted for 400 years of the elves kind of just pinning Morgoth and the orcs in Angband and keeping them from getting too far south. And a lot of that is because you have 2 main passes that are being guarded. On this side, we have the main pass that is guarded by... where is he? Here he is. Maethros and the Sons of Feanor. So Maethros has set himself up here in a fortress on a hilltop called Himring, and we have his brothers Celegorm and Curufin, who are down here in this area called Halbad, I believe. I could be wrong and not reading that correctly, and I apologize for that. And then we have another brother, Caranthir. Temple saying, geez, I guess time really doesn't matter much to the elves. They can be patient. They can wait. Yes, they can. But not too patient. We'll get into that in a second. We have Caranthir, who is in this realm here called Thargelion, and they hold this pass so that orcs really can't get this far south into this land down here, Osiriand, and take over the world and all that horrible stuff. There we go. So that's the east. In the west, we've got the High King of the Noldor, Fingolfin, who is ruling this area here called Hithlum, and his fortress is here called Ithilcirion. There we go. And down here is another area called Dorlomin, which is technically part of Hithlum, but is ruled separately by Fingolfin's son, Fingon. And he also rules it with men, and the house of Marach, which at this point is led by a man named Hador. Is it Hador? Could be Gundor. Or, no, it's Hador and then his son Galdor, who takes over when Hador passes away. So this is part. Now, the entrance of men into this whole equation is really what sort of lights a fire under a lot of people, because now they realize that human life is more fragile and more finite, and so. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but that sort of lights a fire under some people to try to do something about this, to try to take the fight to Morgoth and stop with this standoff. So let's get rid of Fingolfin here. And so next we have this land here, Dorthonion, which are highlands and forest, and is also one of the main watchtower areas, or one of the main watch areas. And those are led by Angrod and Egnor. I did that incorrectly. That's Angrod on the left and Egnor on the right. And they're brothers, and they're sons of Finarfin. And they also hold this with men. They're mostly from the house of Beor. And right now, the leader of the House of Beor is a man named Bregor, and his son, whose name I'm sure will get a lot of giggles from a lot of you. His name is Bragollach. So go ahead and giggle at that one. So that's Dorthonion, and then we have. What do we have? We have Finrod, who is now holed up in the secret hidden kingdom of Nargothrond down here. And he also holds the watchtower of Minas Tirith. Or I should say his house does, which is right here. And Minas Tirith is really more of a watchtower. It's not really like a big fortress, and this holds this area here called the Pass of Sirion, which is another one of those gateways into the south. And Suzanne is saying Brago plus Egolas. Yes, and I don't know which character name came first, Legolas or Bragolas. Since the Silmarillion is kind of an amalgam of lots of stories that Tolkien has written over the years. And I suppose that if I were to read more of the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, there might be some clue as to which came first in there, but I haven't done that yet. I haven't quite unlocked that nerd achievement, despite the fact that I actually have 2 copies of the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. There's a weird story behind that, but I won't get into that. Aren't you glad that I do this live and uncut so that you can hear me ramble like an idiot for a few minutes, completely off topic? So we got Finrod in Nargothrond and also controlling Minas Tirith and holding the pass of Sirion. And then finally, we have Turgon, who is ruling Gondolin, the hidden, secret, nobody knows about it kingdom. Which is it's a funny thing, because, still at this point, nobody outside of Gondolin knows about Gondolin's existence. And that's exactly how Turgon wants it. And so we have this standoff, and I guess I should also mention that we have Thingol in Doriath, which is protected by his wife Melian, so nobody can get into it. Temple saying, just makes you sound like a distracted, lovable professor. We love your rambling. Well, thank you. I have never been called a professor before, and I don't know how to take it. So that's where we stand right now. We have elves spread all over the world, pinning in Morgoth into Angband, and it's been going on for 400 years. It's very much a standoff at this point, which brings us to let's bring it up here. Okay, which brings us to Fingolfin, who is sort of, let's move that. Okay, fine, whatever. Okay, can't move it, or I could, I just don't want to. Okay, so we have Fingolfin, who is he's in Hithlum, right up here, and he assembles the lords of the Noldor together to discuss, maybe it's time for us to bring the fight to Morgoth. And he is he's supported by Angrod, who is Hurin Dorthonian, and he's one of the few people who has like a direct line of sight to Angband and the peaks of Thangorodrim, and he's on board with Fingolfin, saying we really need to we need to end this standoff and begin an assault on Angband before Morgoth has a chance to unleash whatever the heck he's doing in there on us. And the Sons of Feanor also agree with him, but he's ultimately outvoted regardless. Thingol is one of those who outvote him, mostly because they feel that they have strength of numbers. You have the Noldor, Thingol's Sindar elves have joined them and intermingled with them and fight alongside them at this point. And you also have men now who have done the same thing. So you have a very large strength of numbers in Beleriand now, of these armies who are standing outside the gates of Angband. And so they sort of feel like, you know what, we should just leave well enough alone. We don't really perceive that Morgoth is going to do anything. Now, bear in mind, nobody can perceive what Morgoth is doing because he's entirely underground, and all they can see are the mountaintops. But at the same time, they're very confident in their strength of numbers. They've spent 400 years in rather a peaceful time, and so they don't really want to rock the boat too much. And so they ultimately vote down Fingolfin and decide, we're not going to do anything at this time. And Fingolfin and Angrod and Egnor and the Sons of Feanor are really not too happy about this, because they know that Morgoth is not the kind of person, the kind of being who is just going to sit there in Angband and just go, well, guess they got me. I'll just sit here forever. He's up to something. The problem is they have no idea what, and they are afraid of just letting it come to fruition without stopping it before they have a chance. And fairly rightly so, because Morgoth is planning stuff. But Morgoth himself is also impatient, and he doesn't really... He kind of underestimates the strength of the Noldor and of men, and decides to... he finally opens up his attack, but he does it sooner than expected, and Tolkien describes it this way. He says, but on his part he esteemed too lightly the valor of the elves, and of men he took yet no account. And it was said that his hate overcame his counsel, so that if he had but endured to wait longer until his designs were full, then the Noldor would have perished utterly. So even Morgoth is getting impatient, and it begins with Thangorodrim pretty much exploding. It just erupts and sends fire and lava and brimstone and everything out over the plains of Gondolin, destroying all the encampments there, killing tons of elves, and rendering this plain into a desolate wasteland, which becomes known as Anfauglith, or actually, hang on a sec. Or the gasping dust. So he creates this huge attack, this huge assault, and then once everybody, and it's sort of like the signal that I'm a comin', and the elves are not entirely prepared for this. Some are, some aren't, but after the fires die down, then he sends out his armies, which are led this time by Glaurung the dragon, now fully formed and fully developed and fully armored, and he is out for blood, and he's followed by Balrogs, and the Balrogs are followed by orcs, and it is an all-out assault on everybody everywhere. And this battle has probably the coolest name of any battle that we're told here, both in Elvish and in English. The Elvish name for the battle is Dagor Bragollach, and the English name for it is the Battle of the Sudden Fire. So this is a really intense battle, and they push everybody back. Now Maethros will start. Now in the chapter, Tolkien kind of jumps between stories as he's telling this, and I'm going to try to do my best to sort of do it one story at a time to sort of keep us all on the same page. How well I'll succeed at that, we'll find out. So we have Maethros in Himring, and he is dogged and determined to hold back Glaurung, to hold back the Balrogs, to hold back the orcs, because he's got his own personal vendetta, because he was chained up on the mountains of Thangorodrim. Aravandi saying, that pick is cool, but somehow I didn't picture Glaurung having wings. I imagined him pretty much having to walk everywhere. And I've seen interpretations of Glaurung that way. I sort of feel like as a dragon he should have wings, and I sort of look at his first battle with Fingon, where he's taken down primarily by arrows on horseback, which says to me that it's Fingon and all of his people having to shoot their arrows up, and that's the only way you can get to him. And so that says to me that he was flying. So there probably is a point later on where he doesn't use his wings as much, but I think for now he's probably a winged demon. But I've seen it both ways, and that's sort of my interpretation of it. I could be wrong, but I don't know. So where is Mathros's bit? Because yeah. Okay. So we have a fantastic description of Mathros here. Uh, Mathros did deeds of surpassing valor, and the orcs fled before his face. For since his torment upon Thangorodrim, his spirit burned like a white fire within, and he was as one that returns from the dead. Like, that is just such a powerful line describing Mathros. And you have to remember, he is the eldest son of Feanor, and Feanor is the spirit of fire, and so he, of course, also has that spirit of fire within him. And so when push comes to shove, he is dogged and relentless and determined to hold Himring against everybody. He was saying Glaurung is evil 1,000 times worse than Smaug. That is very correct. And we haven't even really gotten into the worst that Glaurung does. That comes later on. But yeah, he is an evil, evil dragon. So Mathros is able to hold this pass against Glaurung, but that ain't gonna stop him. So rather than going through Himring, Glaurung instead decides to do an end run around him through this little pass here, and he takes out the lands controlled by Celegorm and Curufin. And the two of them actually retreat. They retreat out completely and go all the way down to Nargothrond. And then we have Caranthir. So once Glaurung and his armies have gotten through here, they then continue on to Thargelion and drive out Caranthir. And he joins up with his brothers, Amrod and Amras, who have been down here in this area here. And they retreat all the way down south into Osirian and join up with the Green Elves and hold that area further south. And now the orcs have control of this whole area here. But like an amazing beacon of light, Mathros is still standing tall in Himring, and his brother Maglor has joined him. Suzanne is saying, Josh, now this is your football sportsman audition tape. Oh, if only. Unfortunately, as soon as as soon as anybody talks to me about football, my eyes immediately glaze over. I'd be a horrible sports announcer. However, if anybody were to do a History Channel style documentary on the battles of the Silmarillion, I'm totally there. So we have Mathros standing alone with his brother in Himring, basically surrounded on all sides at this point. Then we have, what is next? Okay, so that's in the east. Then we have what's going on in the west, which is a little story with Finrod. And Finrod has been holding up here, trying to hold the pass of Sirion here. And he is completely waylaid, and he's surrounded on all sides by orcs. And then we enter in a new character. Suzanne is saying, or we could add dragons to American football. We could do that. That would certainly make it more interesting. So So Finrod is surrounded on all sides by orcs. He's getting penned in. He's close to death, and then enter one of the sons of Bragor, Barahir. And now everybody's talking about dragons in football. Okay, back to the story. Barahir, who is he's from the House of Beor. He's stationed more to the east of Dorthonion, like somewhere around here, and he sees the attack of on Finrod, and he and his men go in, and they basically create a perimeter of spears around Finrod to help escort him out. And Finrod repays this by promising Barahir. He swears an oath to Barahir that he will aid him and his kin whenever they ask for it, since Barahir saved his life. And to seal that oath, he gives Barahir his ring, which some of you may recognize as the ring that Aragorn wears in the Lord of the Rings movies. And that is the exact same ring. This ring of Fingon he gives to Barahir as a token of his oath. And that ring, through various circumstances, is passed down the line until it finally comes into the possession of Aragorn. But this is how it first comes into the possession of men, as this token of an oath. So that's the backstory of the Ring of Barahir that Aragorn is wearing. So that's Finrod, and that's the east. Now we come to Fingolfin. Now at this point, Fingolfin is seeing that the sons of Feanor have been driven out. He's seeing that Finrod has had to retreat back into Nargothrond. The Sindar elves, most of them have retreated back into Doriath. And while he's still able to hold Ithel Sirion here, and he's still able to hold Hithlum, Hador, however, is killed, and in an orc assault. So basically what he is seeing is the Noldor being completely overrun. He's seeing what are we talking about in the chat here? I don't even get it now. Okay. So what Fingolfin is seeing at this point is just everybody being scattered. The Noldor are retreating. He is surrounded on all sides by his enemies, and so he decides, screw it. I am going to take this fight directly to Morgoth's doorstep. And he charges out by himself. I'm going to have to bring up the text here because it's really amazing. Okay. So, and I also forgot to mention that in the assault of Dorthonion, Angrod and Egnor were killed, as was Bragor and Bragollach. So Barahir is now the person who needs to hold Dorthonion. So basically, Fingolfin charges off on his own, and he is completely full of rage, and he is a spirit of fire, and he is charging through the orcs. Now, the way I imagine it is He's on his horse, and he is either killing orcs all around him, or orcs are just fleeing in terror from him, because he is now an absolute force of nature with one goal: to go to Angband and to destroy Morgoth himself. And so he finally comes to the gates of Angband and calls out Morgoth to single combat. One of the most epic things you can possibly imagine. Like, as cool as that bit where Aragorn is at the Black Gate in Return of the King, and he calls out, "Let the Lord of the Black Land come forth, let justice be done upon him." This is even more intense because, as you can see, he is just this blinding white light from his armor and from his sword and from his shield. And what does this say? Yeah, he passed over Dor Nufalgalith like a wind amid the dust, and all that beheld his onset fled in amaze, thinking that Orome himself was come, for a great madness of rage was upon him, so that his eyes shone like the eyes of the Valar. So, Fingolfin is just rage incarnate. And Aravandi's saying, isn't that what Aragorn said at the Black Gate in the movie? It is. But, and as cool as that is, like, what we have here is Fingolfin calling Morgoth craven and lord of slaves, and demanding that he come out and meet him in single combat. And Morgoth doesn't want to do it. He actually needs to sort of be talked into it. And it's never said by whom, just that his counsel finally like convinced him to go out and meet Fingolfin. And so he does. And he comes out, and he is bearing his great hammer, which is called Grond. And the two of them engage in a one-on-one duel that is completely insane and intense. Morgoth is swinging at Fingolfin. Fingolfin is able to dodge all of his hits, and whenever Morgoth smashes the ground with Grond, it creates a brand new it creates a whole new pit, and it's destroying the land around them. And Fingolfin is just darting around. I think Tolkien puts it as lightning under a cloud. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. And he issued forth, clad in black armor, and he stood before the king like a tower, iron crown, and his vast shield sable unblazing cast a shadow before him like a storm cloud. But Fingolfin gleamed underneath it like a star, for his mail was overlaid with silver, and his blue shield was set with crystals, and he drew his sword Ringiel that glittered like ice. And so, yeah. Then Morgoth hurled aloft Grond, the hammer of the underworld, and swung it down like a bolt of thunder. But Fingolfin sprang aside, and Grond rent a mighty pit in the earth, whence smoke and fire darted. Many times Morgoth essayed to smite him, and each time Fingolfin leaped away as a lightning shoots from under a dark cloud. So, it's such intense imagery. Like, I'm just imagining Fingolfin just like zooming and flying all over this, jumping up on hilltops and diving down at Morgoth. And he's able to wound Morgoth 7 times until finally it gets to a point where Fingolfin is finally tiring himself out. And that's when the tide turns, and Morgoth is able to get some blows in, and Fingolfin goes down. And then we have, like, it's kind of a cheap comparison, but I sort of compare it to last season of Game of Thrones, the duel between Prince Oberyn and the Mountain, because Fingolfin is like Prince Oberyn. He is darting around. He clearly has the upper hand in this fight for most of it, until finally just something happens that turns, and suddenly he is just laid down. And Morgoth is able to get him down to the ground and then stamps down on his neck. And Morgoth is a huge giant at this point. And so stamping down on Fingolfin's neck is going to kill him. But not before Fingolfin takes his sword and just slices the crap out of his foot to the point where Morgoth goes through the rest of his life with a limp. And that's how Fingolfin is killed. And how does he say it? Thus died Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, most proud and valiant of the elven kings of old. The orcs made no boast of that duel at that gate, neither did the elves sing of it, for their sorrow is too deep. Yet the tale is remembered still. And this is now Morgoth is so devastated by this. Like, he won the battle, but he won it hard. Like, he is wounded for life from this. And so he wants to destroy Fingolfin's body and make an example out of him. But not before we have another Deus Ex Eagles. Thorondor, the High King of the Eagles, comes swooping in and claws and tears at Morgoth's face, again wounding him permanently, scarring him permanently, and forcing Morgoth back into Angband, at which point Thorondor takes Fingolfin's body and carries him to Gondolin, where they set up a tomb for him on one of the high mountains surrounding Gondolin, and this becomes a warning to all the orcs, and none of them come near that area. And so that is the story of Fingolfin and his epic passing. And so at this point, the high kingship of the Noldor passes to his son, Fingon, who is now the Lord of Hithlum, and the Lord of Dorloman passes to the son of Hador, whose name is Galdor. And Hithlum still stays occupied by them, but now we have orcs overrunning everything, because now we come to another big assault. And another game changer, because they're still able to hold the Pass of Sirion here until somebody comes out of Angband. That somebody's name is Sauron. And Sauron is coming to take out Minas Tirith, the watchtower on the Pass of Sirion, and open that up and occupy that pass. And he's able to do it. And there's another great description of Sauron at this point. Okay. Sauron was now become a sorcerer of dreadful power, master of shadows and of phantoms, foul in wisdom, cruel in strength, misshaping what he touched, twisting what he ruled, lord of werewolves. His dominion was torment. He took Minas Tirith by assault, for a dark cloud fell upon those that defeated it, and Orodreth was driven out and fled to Nargothrond. And so Sauron was able to lead an assault on Minas Tirith and take it over. And all the elves who were in Minas Tirith retreat to Nargothrond, and now Sauron and ergo Morgoth now holds the Pass of Sirion. And he turns Minas Tirith into a dark watchtower, and it becomes his fortress. And it's changed to the name is changed to Tolling Garhoth, the Isle of Werewolves. Werewolves are part of his army, and it's a little bit later in here where it's described what werewolves actually are. But I'd have to find it again. Werewolves are essentially evil spirits that have been taken by Sauron and transplanted into wolves. So, not exactly the type of werewolves that we're used to seeing. Like, they're basically large, sentient, wholly evil wolf creatures. And that's the main bulk of Sauron's army. But now Sauron has his own fortress. He controls the last pass to the south, and now the orcs have free reign over everything. And they take over pretty hardcore. And so by coming down here, they then are able to finally attack this area here, this forest called Brethil, which is the home primarily to the people of Haleth, the people who followed Lady Haleth through the Eri Gorgoroth and the Haunted Woods into this area, and they have to fight off this new orc assault, and they do fairly, but one of the things that happens is it should be mentioned that Galdor and his sister, they married people from Brethil, and part of the arrangement of that marriage was the sons of Galdor would be raised in Brethil, which are his sons Huor and Hurin. And Huor and Hurin are basically waylaid during this attack and completely separated from everybody. But they're still aided by Ulmo, who rules the waters of Sirion, the river Sirion, and he raises a mist to shroud them. But they're still lost. They don't know where they are. And eventually they are taken by Thorondor, the Lord of the Eagles. They're taken out of harm, and they are taken, and he takes them to Gondolin. Hang on. There we go. He takes them to the hidden kingdom of Gondolin. And and from there, they're welcomed by King Turgon, because Turgon had part of his vision for Gondolin was that one day he would welcome in people from the house of Marach, or people from the houses of men. And so he does. He welcomes them, and they stay there for a year. And of course, they have to abide by the rules that once you're in Gondolin, you can never leave. And they become princes in their own right. Hurin is he learns a lot, and he becomes very well educated in elven lore and elven life. But it finally comes to a point where Hurin and Huor go to Turgon and say, we really want to get back to our family. You elves, you have all the time in the world. You don't die. Men, we're going to grow old and die someday. Our lives are finite, and we want to get back to the fight while we still can. But Turgon says, well, you know the rules. Once you're in Gondolin, you can't leave. You might be able to tell somebody where we are. And that's when Hurin tells him, we were taken here by eagles. We didn't know where we were when they took us. We were already lost. We were terrified of heights, so they blindfolded us. And we still have no idea where we are. And so if you are able to, if Thorondor is able to take us back the same way, we still won't know where this is, and we won't tell anybody where we've been. And Turgon agrees to this, but not before Hurin gets a little bit of a talking to by Maeglin, who is Turgon's nephew and one of the High Lords in Gondolin. and somebody who, as we've established, is very, very soft-spoken and very dour and very cynical. And he has a bit of a conversation with Hurin, basically sort of chiding him for wanting to go back, and telling him like that this is a really big thing you're asking of Turgon. And so what Maeglin says is, the king's grace is greater than you know, and the law has become less stern than aforetime, or else no choice would be given to you but to abide here to your life's end. And Hurin says to him then, well, the king's grace is great indeed, but if our word is not enough, then we will swear oaths to you. And so Hurin and Huor swear an oath to Maeglin that they will never reveal the location of Gondolin. And Thorondor agrees to take them back, and so this is about a year later. They finally return to Hithlum, where their father Galdor is now the ruler of their realm of Dorlomin. And Galdor is very astounded by the fact that not only are they alive, but they're decked out in elven finery. And Galdor asks him, what have you been doing for a year? Where have you been? What did you go through? And Hurin pretty much evades the question, saying, just be glad that we're home. We were waylaid. He sort of tells them like a pithy little lie that, well, we were lost in the forest for a year. And Galdor basically says, yeah, right. If you were lost in the forest for a year, how did you eat? You look very well fed. You don't look starved. How did you get all this elven finery? You come back to us like looking like princes. Don't tell me you were lost in the woods. And Hurin then says to him, listen, I can't tell you where we were. Just be glad we're back. That's all I can say. And we swore an oath not to reveal where we were. And Galdor, once he hears that, he understands and honors that and doesn't ask him anything again. But they can sort of assume at this point that they were in the hidden kingdom that Turgon established. They don't know where, but they can sort of, like, Galdor and his people are sort of putting two and two together, that they were in this hidden elven kingdom. They don't know its name. They don't know where it is. It's barely a rumor. But they know that Hurin has seen something that no other man has. Hurin and Huor have seen something no other men have ever seen, and probably will never see. But he abides by the oath and doesn't question him any further. Now the question comes up: if Gondolin is so fortified and has so many armies, what has Turgon been doing while orcs have been spreading out all around him? And this is kind of a controversial decision that Turgon makes. He decides not to join in this fight, and instead he sees the Dagor Bragollach and the huge attack that's been happening as the beginning of the end for the Noldor, and that they alone won't be able to stop Morgoth. They're going to need the help of the Valar. And so, in secret, he sends out some emissaries to go to the Phallus, go to the bays, and construct their own ships and sail to Valinor and beg the Valar to finally intervene on their behalf against Morgoth. And as we know, the Valar have hidden Valinor at this point, so even if you were to sail directly west, eventually you would be waylaid and you would be turned around and you would be lost. And so he sends out these emissaries, only a few come back, nobody reaches Valinor. And so Turgon is still very much, he's just going to sit and wait. He's going to bide his time. So Gondolin is still this hidden kingdom that nobody knows about. And this is something that is really bugging Morgoth, because he knows that, first of all, he knows he can never get into Doriath unless it's him or Sauron personally coming in to destroy the Girdle of Melian. So Doriath is very much off limits to them. He also knows that there is a place called Nargothrond. He doesn't know where it is. He knows that... where did my Morgoth go? Oh, dang. Okay. Okay. Huh. Weird. Some of my pictures disappeared. Okay. So... so Morgoth... Morgoth knows that there is a place called Nargothrond. He doesn't know where it is, and he doesn't know how to assault it. And as far as Gondolin goes, he just knows that Turgon and his people disappeared, and that they have set up something somewhere. He doesn't know its name, he doesn't know its location, he doesn't know anything about it, and his not knowing is driving him crazy. So with all this in mind, he decides he's going to go after the one target that he knows of, which is... Here it is. Which is... No, wrong. Here it is. Hithlum and Dorlomin. And he knows that he can take. And so he tries again. He goes after Hithlum again, and this time Galdor is killed by an arrow, and so the lordship of Dorlomin then goes to Hurin, his eldest son. But why did all those pictures disappear? Weird. Okay. So they're close to being overrun this time. But coming to the rescue is Círdan, who is the lord of the Falathrim, the sea elves who reside down here. And they come up the shore, come through here, through the Firth of Drengist, and help reinforce Fingon and Galdor and Hurin and everybody, and they're able to drive the orcs back again. And so, for now, Hithlum and Ithilcirion still stand. So, it's a bit of a tough victory, but they still have their presence here, and at this point it's hard to say that Morgoth didn't win this, but it was a very hard won victory, and he didn't completely destroy the Noldor. So it's not the victory that Morgoth was hoping for. It's not the victory that he really thought he could get, and it's because he was impatient. He didn't quite think his plans through enough, and this is a much harder won victory than he was anticipating. So he goes back into Angband and begins to form plans for his next assault, his next greater assault. And during this time, and it's a short time, it's only a few years, the elves are able to regroup further south in southern Beleriand and get themselves ready for whatever is going to come next. But they're not entirely on their own. There are still people in the north, specifically Barahir, who is still up in Dorthonion. But because Angron and Egnor are dead, because his father and his brother are dead, they're basically getting overrun, and the sorcery of Morgoth and of Sauron are starting to take over this land and make it dark and forbidding, and it's pushing them back further and further and further. The orcs are just... There they are. There we go. The orcs are just really overrunning this area, and Barahir and his people are being driven back further and further, and finally it's his wife who decides she wants to stand by Barahir, but at the same time she knows that they're being overrun and they need to retreat. And so she takes the women and the children and everybody else who will go, and they retreat back out of Dorthonion through the Eri Gorgoroth and down into Brethil, where some of them stay and some of them continue on to Dorlomin. But eventually it comes down to Barahir, and just a small handful of people are the only ones left in Dorthonion, and they're hiding out in the Highlands like outlaws. And it's Barahir and 12 other people. There's most of them are his assistants or men who decided to stay with him, but it's essentially just Barahir and 12 people. Yeah. And I don't remember all their names, but among them is his son, Beren. And I know it looks a bit like, what's his name? The guy from, I can never remember his name. You know who I'm talking about. And his son, Beren, is with him. And they're living like outlaws in Dorthonion. And that's where we're going to leave this story. So, coming up next is going to be, of course, the story of Beren and a certain woman named Luthien. So that's the Dagor Bragollach, the Battle of the Sudden Flame, the Battle of the Sudden Fire. And that is our story so far. So this is a very intense chapter. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's all sorts of crazy battles going on. There's all sorts of people dying. There's that amazing battle between Fingolfin and Morgoth, which part of me is like, I hope that a Silmarillion movie or TV series comes out at some point, just because I want to see that battle realized. That duel between Morgoth and Fingolfin is just so epic and tragic at the same time. Like it's a epic battle where you're rooting for the guy and he's doing a great job, and then there's a quick turn at the end and everything goes to hell and he is killed brutally. So that's the stage here. Everything is more in chaos, and so Morgoth has done a lot of damage, and how everybody recovers from this is going to be quite intense. And so the next chapter is, of course, of Beren and Luthien. And I'm not going to lie, this is one I've been looking forward to pretty much since I started this whole thing. Beren and Luthien is one of my favorite chapters. And it's a big one. So there's going to be a lot to talk about. Not next week, because next week we'll be talking about The Neverending Story. But in 2 weeks, on July 5th, we will do the chapter of Beren and Luthien, and I am looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that a lot. And I think, judging from the chat, I think a lot of people are looking forward to that one. It's a great story. It's an epic tale. It could be a trilogy of movies unto itself. Um, so I noticed everybody sort of got very quiet as I was going through the story. I hope you weren't bored or you were just really concentrating and paying attention. Um, I always worry that I'm boring people with this, but haven't gotten too much hate mail, so I guess I'm doing okay. Uh, so so yeah, that's the Silmarillion for this week. Quite a battle, quite a humongous battle. Um, there have been some discussion questions that I've thought of, and that I've seen in other forums. Because if you're not aware, my friend Amy Ratcliffe over at the Nerdist did a she runs their own Nerdist book club over there, and several months ago they did their own read through of the Silmarillion, and she brought up some interesting questions about this chapter, such as, was Fingolfin dumb to go charging against Morgoth the way he did? And there's a I sort of feel like it was not stupid on Fingolfin's part to do that. It was a desperate move for sure, but also one that I feel like I can he sort of felt like, I can win this war. I can stop this war right here if I just go and challenge Morgoth to single combat, sort of cut off the head of the snake. So I don't feel like it was a wholly rash decision, or that it was a totally impulsive or stupid one. Um, so I sort of feel like it. I sort of feel like it was a good move on Fingolfin's part, because if nothing else, he has proven he demoralized the orcs in a big way by just beating the ever-loving crap out of their lord. Um, and he also proved to the elves, to the Noldor, that we are not going to give up. Um, that we are still holding to the Oath of Feanor, like it or not. We are still going to fight Morgoth to the bitter end. We're still going to regain those Silmarils. And I've seen some artist depictions of this battle with Morgoth coming out wearing the crown that has the Silmarils in them, and I don't think he would have done that, because the way Tolkien describes it, the Silmarils are embedded in a crown, but they're also hidden behind vaults. They're hidden behind huge security, and I don't believe that Morgoth would have come out into the field of battle wearing the Silmarils. That's just me. And also, Tolkien never says specifically that he's wearing the Silmarils in that battle. He says he's wearing an iron crown, yes, but he never says that they're holding the Silmarils. So my thoughts are that Eravandi saying, I read the Silm last year during a read-along on Tumblr. Yeah, I know a lot of people have been doing read-alongs with this, and I know I'm kind of late to the game on it. And I've been chided by some people by saying, why are you doing this now? It's already been done by so many other people. I'm like, because we haven't done it on Torn yet. Or if we have, it's been in the chat room. And I thought, like, we should do this on the web show. We should do this on a web show. So that was part of my motivation for doing this. Because the Silmarillion is a very dense book, and there are lots of ways to interpret it. There's lots of ways to look at it, and so I sort of feel like you can never have too many read-throughs of this book. And another question that was brought up on the Nerdist was was Thorondor right to bring Hurin and Huor to Gondolin, to the Secret Kingdom, where they could at least potentially reveal the location to somebody else? And like, why didn't Thorondor take them to Nargothrond, or take them back to Dorloman, back to their families? Um, and I sort of feel like this was a calculated move on Thorondor's part. For one, Thorondor seems to be very closely tied to Gondolin. Like, he brings Fingolfin's body there. He brings Hurin and Huor there. Um, and so he's got something of a relationship with Turgon and with Gondolin. And I kind of feel like Thorondor's move of bringing men into Gondolin was to, in a way, fulfill the prophecy that Turgon knew, was that he was going to have to eventually open his doors to men. And and also, it also helps to reinforce the ties between elves and men, which could easily be broken and completely torn apart after this battle. Because one thing that happens that I forgot, that I didn't mention, was that after the battle, Morgoth sends out lots of spies and lots of evil dark agents out into the world, and he captures lots of people, lots of elves and lots of men. And elves become a lot of the elves that he captures become dark agents for him, and they're passing along all these false promises, particularly to men, saying, "You've been led astray by the elves. Join Morgoth, and all will be forgiven." Um, and then they also bring in Easterlings, and they join up with Maethros. And it's sort of left ambivalent, I think, as to whether or not the Easterlings truly, or at least the Easterlings who are working with Maethros, whether or not they are truly working with Morgoth, but nobody trusts them. Let's see if I can find where they talk about that a little bit. See, this is like all over the place. There was small love between the Aedain and the Easterlings, and they met seldom, for the newcomers abode long in East Beleriand. But Hador's folk were shut in Hithlum, and Beor's house was well nigh destroyed. So, okay, here we go. And yeah, so the sons of Ulfang the Black were Ulfast and Ulwarth and Uldor the Accused, and they followed Caranthir and swore allegiance to him and proved faithless. Now, when they say faithless, he's actually talking about faithless to Morgoth. Like, they were sent as agents for Morgoth, but then they changed sides. At least the ones who joined up with Caranthir. And Maethros joins up with some of the Easterlings, and it says, "And Morgoth was well content, for this was as he had designed." But then it says that some of the ones who joined up with Caranthir turned against Morgoth and decided to stay faithful to Caranthir. So it's sort of ambivalent as to whether or not they stayed faithful to Maethros. Of course, that's how that plays out will be revealed later on. But there are lots of evil agents. If an elf was ever captured by Morgoth and was able to escape, like, for real, he was still spurned by all of the elves, because they didn't know, they couldn't trust him. And so basically, if you were captured by Morgoth, you were either subjected to torment, became an evil agent, or you were or you were deemed an outlaw if you were able to escape. So there was no winning if you were captured. There was no coming back from that. And so it's this mistrust, which is really like how Morgoth is able to sink his claws into the Noldor, is by fomenting distrust between them. And that's the true evil of his work. I mean, sure, he's doing lots of great assaults, and he's tearing structures down, and he's taking over fortresses, and he's exploding dust and ash over everything. But more than that, he's also breaking the trust from within, and that's what can really destroy the Noldor. And so where all that goes, we'll find out in a few weeks. But for now, we'll leave it there. Next week will be the Never-Ending Story. Where is my mouse? There it is. Next week will be the Never-Ending Story. Then the week after that will be Beren and Luthien. And then the week after that will be Comic-Con and will be Dark. So we got 2 more weeks and then a week off. And then after that, the home stretch. So looking forward to talking Never-Ending Story with you next week. Really looking forward to talking with you about Beren and Luthien in 2 weeks. That's going to be a fun episode. I don't want to... I can't miss it because I'm hosting it, but I hope you won't miss it either. So I will see everybody next week. Thank you for joining in, for listening to this recap of the Silmarillion for this one chapter. And I will see you all next week, and never stop reading.